Hey, party people, welcome to this week's Money News in Human Words. And this is our last one for 2022 before we take a break from our regular programming for the holidays. But a few key stories in the news this week. The first thing that I want to talk about is the super funds that have lost a total of $14 billion and 300,000 members through this year. Basically, there's been this huge exodus from a bunch of retail super funds, and both in terms of the total assets that they're managing and the members themselves. The top five funds have been AMP leading the charge. They've lost a total of 110,000 members and $5.9 billion in assets out of their funds through this year. Then Asgard BT, Retirement Wrap BT, they were listed as one of the worst performing super funds, and they failed APRA's test earlier this year, so no surprises there. ANZ Retirement Portfolio Service, they've lost a total of 42,000 members and $2 billion in funds. And MLC coming in number 5, 31,000 members leaving with a total of $3.2 billion in assets that have been lost. And they're not all losers though, because the industry funds have been massive beneficiaries of this switch, with the biggest super fund in Australia, Australian Super, picking up over 400,000 new members during the same period. So it's not a move away from super, and it's not just because the markets are a little bit down, but it's showing that people are being smart or considered with where they're putting their superannuation money, which is great to see. However, there's a lot of scary stats out there that show that still over half of Australians are allowing their employer to choose their super fund for them. So basically, choosing whatever the default option is with their employer, which sometimes that can be good, but in a lot of cases, there are better options out there. And when we take someone through the advice process, over 95% of the time, they choose to use a different super fund and different investments to the default offering from their employer, which suggests to me that perhaps letting your employer choose is not necessarily the best option. Now, as I said, the industry super funds have been massive winners of these changes. They've now have a total of over $1 trillion in funds under management that have picked up a lot of the people that have left these retail funds, but a lot of new employers are picking up industry super funds as they realize that retail funds probably aren't necessarily the best for their team. Now, industry super funds, in my opinion, they can be great. And certainly from a saving of fees perspective, industry super funds can really give you a few advantages there. But one thing to call out with this, and for these hundreds of thousands of people that have switched over to industry super funds, is that industry super funds tend to hold pretty significant concentrations of unlisted assets and investments in commercial property investments. And particularly in the current environment that we're seeing at the moment, that can be pretty risky. Commercial property is already falling and stated to fall more in the new year. And so are unlisted assets, which are things like toll roads and massive infrastructure projects that are typically really big. So multi-billion-dollar projects, multi-billion-dollar investments. And when interest rates are really high and risk of recession is high and economies are not performing as well, no one really wants to buy multi-billion-dollar investments. So the value of these can seriously tank. And we're seeing that already in the unlisted asset space. So great save on cost. But for anyone that's changing their super or looking at what super is best for them, you should really take the time to understand what your super is invested into to make sure that it's actually going to deliver both in terms of cost savings as well as the actual performance, which is all important. My next piece of this week is around the property clearance rates falling to a 5-month low in the final selling weekend of 2022. Basically seen over the last weekend that auction clearance rates have fallen to the lowest level since July, which has been obviously a weak end to the year. No massive surprises, I suppose, given that there have been such a significant amount of interest rate rises and people pulling back from the property market as a result. But there have been some structural changes to how people are selling properties in the current environment, which I think are interesting and give some lessons for would-be property buyers. Now, I think overall, if you look at the fact that there's been a decline in prices, we've seen that house prices down, 10 to 15%, depending on what state you're in around the country. But when you're seeing a decline in prices and now a decline in activity, it means that anyone that is selling properties at the moment or that will be selling properties over the next few months, they probably feel like they really want to sell properties, or maybe they even need to sell property. So for people that are looking to buy property and enter the property investing market, that creates an opportunity because your sellers are going to be really motivated. It means that you can potentially pick up a good deal. Now, we've seen the other part of this is that we've seen an overall decline in the amount of properties that are getting sold through auction as opposed to private treaty. Last year, we were seeing almost half, 47% of all properties were sold at auction. That's declined to below 40% throughout this year, which is actually a good thing if you're buying property, because it means that you're buying property outside of that competitive pressure of the auction environment. And as much as we know that property should be a purely investment decision and we shouldn't let the emotion get into it, it can be hard to escape that when you're caught up in the heat of an auction. Also, with more people there, it just tends to add zeros onto the bottom line of the property. So the fact that a lot of properties are being sold outside of auction means that for anyone buying properties, you've got more negotiating power. You can get a good deal. Couple that with the fact that these sellers are going to be highly motivated with the interest rate rises, clearance rates down, property decline down. Potentially for property buyers, there's some good news there. Now, we are seeing a decline. So prices down around 1.5% so far in December, which is a little bit more than it was in the previous month. But we are still seeing good areas of the market that are holding up relatively well. We're seeing a lot of properties that are selling at above the reserve prices that are selling at auction over the weekend. And still those premium properties in premium suburbs are holding their value pretty well. So there's some good news out there. There's some strategy stuff to consider. A lot of people, I think, have got property on the roadmap for 2023. And I think given, we saw this big rise up, a big softening, sort of waiting to see where interest rates are landing, the opportunity is there. You need to be smart, though, around how you plan with your property and how you manage your risk. Make sure you can afford it and that further interest rate rises won't catch you out. My last piece for this week is around our dear friend, Mr. Elon Musk, no longer being the world's richest person. Sad day for him. His wealth has dropped by over $100 billion in recent months, which is pretty mind-boggling to think about. And he's just been knocked off the top position for the world's richest person by Bernard Arnault, who is worth about $170 billion and owns 48% of LVMH, which is the luxury brand parent house that owns brands like Louis Vuitton, Tiffany, and Dior. Now, this news about Elon Musk comes as he's just sold another around $6 billion of his Tesla shares to fund his Twitter purchase. And a lot of people are calling that a really crazy move. But look, I suppose time will tell on that one. You don't get to be the world's richest person by being a dummy. So it could be a genius, like some sort of master stroke from him. It could be his first sort of a big failure on the public stage since reaching that world's richest person status. But time will tell on that one. Guys, that's it for me for this week. Hope you enjoyed that. Stay safe out there. Have an amazing holidays, Christmas, and festive season. And I'll catch you back for money news in the new year. Bye for now.